Welcome to No Apologies. I'm Dana Lash. Joe Biden ran on the slogan, Build Back Better, and the idea was that America would come back from the pandemic stronger and better. So now, 8 months into this presidency, it's worth stepping back and taking a look at whether he's making good on that promise, whether or not, by looking at two of his so-called biggest accomplishments: the botched Afghanistan exit and the collapse of the southern border. Now, how is the exit of Afghanistan and the current handling of the U.S. border helping America build back better? It's a fair question because, one, it's his campaign slogan, so we should hold the president accountable to it. But two, every policy and every decision and every statement the administration has made in regards to those two snafus would appear to only build back better everyone and anyone else except America and Americans. So starting with Afghanistan, how did America build back better from the disastrous withdrawal? There are still Americans held behind, well, basically held hostage there behind enemy lines. 13 U.S. service members lost their lives because of poor planning and the inability to secure the Kabul airport. And it didn't have to happen. Thousands of allies were left behind, and we have no idea what's happened to them or will happen to them. The Taliban, the radical Islamic militia group that aided and abetted al-Qaeda in taking out the Twin Towers on 9/11 by allowing Afghanistan to be used as their HQ. They're not fully in control of the country. And Taliban, most definitely building back better with $80 billion over that in U.S. military equipment and arms, as well as another $64 million in apparent aid that, of course, will not go into anyone else's hands except the Taliban, since they run everything. And I'm pretty sure that our Afghan partners are corrupt, as the administration likes to call them. But, you know, the Taliban, they're busy hanging people from cranes. That's what they did over the weekend, by the way. And in any case, thousands upon thousands of Afghan refugees were put on planes and flown to America. I'm all for helping allies, but do we know everyone that we brought in? Are we able to vet every single person? Of course we didn't. And maybe perhaps that's why already a servicewoman was attacked by a small group of Afghan males at Fort Bliss. This came out over the weekend. Officials at Fort Bliss confirmed the report of the assault to Fox News in an email statement saying, quote, "We can confirm that a female service member supporting Operation Allies Welcome reported being assaulted on September 19th by a small group of male evacuees at the Doña Ana complex in New Mexico. And we take the allegation seriously and appropriately, and we appropriately referred the matter to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The safety and well-being of our service members, as well as all of those on our installations, is paramount," end quote. And I'm sure the FBI is going to act as quickly on that as they did Larry Nassar. Because the Biden administration so badly mishandled that exit, we now have thousands of refugees living in America. Now, clearly, some at least are not helping America build back better. Not every single person was an SAV. It's almost as if the exit was designed to do the opposite of helping build back better. So our enemies definitely are doing better. China has immediately strengthened its ties to the Taliban. Not so much immediately, it's been a long-going thing over a decade, but with the desire to integrate Afghanistan into its Belt and Road Initiative, something that the Taliban could very well take advantage of. And China would love to get its hands on that estimated $1 trillion worth of minerals in the country, like lithium, as the CCP continues to attempt to monopolize the rare earth metals. So China is building back better from the Afghan exit, but it's not really clear how America is. Now, nor does our relationship with our allies appear to actually be better, because we seem weaker than ever on the world stage, and our allies feel unimportant because apparently we didn't communicate our plans for the Afghan withdrawal at all, putting our allies, putting our people in harm's way. So the word's out that America, well, at least under this administration, cannot be counted upon. Far from building back better, we were humiliated on the world stage and had to beg the Taliban for safe passage. We can expect the terror threat to grow and emanate from Afghanistan and eventually end up back here. And we know that because it's exactly what these same ingredients in Afghanistan produced previously. So who is getting built back better? Is it possible that Joe Biden wasn't talking about America at all? Let's move to the border now, the southern border. Is the border building back better? We went from building a wall on the border to having no border at all. And don't be fooled, they're clearing that encampment of refugees from under that bridge in Del Rio. At least that's what they say. But they're not sending most of those folks back home. Most are being flown or bused and generally dispersed within the interior of the United States. And here's Department of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, confirming exactly that. Watch.
Of the 17,400 that weren't deported back or didn't return on their own to Mexico, how many of them either, well, first, how many have been released into the U.S.?
They're released on conditions,
yes.
and approximately, I think it's about 10,000 or so, 12,000.
Have been released?
Yes.
And of the 5,000 that are still in process?
We will make determinations whether they will be returned to Haiti based on our public health and public interest authorities.
So are we talking about a total of 12,000, or could it be even higher?
So they're not really concerned about what's happening at the border. Nobody even knows the number. They don't know the number of the people that are left back in Kabul, and they don't know the number here that they're sending throughout the interior. They only care about bad optics at the border. So that's why 12,000 new illegal entrants could be coming to a town near you, and they know it looks bad to have refugee camps on the border. So now they're moving thousands of people towards the interior, as I said. So 12,000 illegals that were just rewarded for illegal entrants, just rewarded for jumping the line. And some, although they said that they were sending some Haitians back, I think that was only a couple of plane loads. So, and the Haitian refugees, I should note, they're not actually refugees from Haiti. They were people who actually had asylum, and they had photo identification cards from Chile and Brazil. People all over the world are waiting to gain entry into the United States the old-fashioned way. Everybody's trying to get in here legally, and apparently we're punishing those people while lawbreakers are rewarded. And if you've been told that every single person, they're all Haiti refugees, but really, they're not. Like I said, the Chilean IDs, there are photos of this all over the place, littered all over the Mexican side of the border. Now, there are many Haitians that have traveled to Chile and Brazil, and they went there. Apparently, there's a sizable community in Santiago. Many of these migrants were living in Chile or Brazil for a number of years. They were gainfully employed, and they were given asylum. And then, apparently, running for the border, they decided that they wanted to try to do the same thing, except that's not how that process works. You were already granted asylum in Chile, and no matter what the coyotes told them, and believe the coyotes are definitely leveraging this for financial gain. So in total, we're averaging about 200,000 migrant encounters a month since the administration took over. That's a 21-year high. I mean, there's more caravans of migrants on the way, apparently a huge group of Haitians on the way as well. Another 4,000 are said to be moving through Panama, and another 16,000 about to cross over from Colombia. And yet, if it were up to many in the Democrat Party, like the Robert O'Rourke's, who when he campaigned for president said he would tear down the border wall, if it were up to him, Democrats like him, there would be no border at all. In fact, here's Beto O'Rourke, and his father said he nicknamed him that because it was appropriation, saying exactly this back in 2019. Watch.
Would you take the wall down now? Here?
Yes.
Like you have a wall?
Absolutely.
Knock it down. I'd
take the wall down.
And do you think the city, if there's a referendum here in this city, that would pass?
I do.
I mean, they're in El Paso, which is one of the safest border areas in Texas. And it is such because of that force multiplier of the wall, but okay. Robert O'Rourke apparently is unhappy with Biden's handling of the border because it's not open enough for him. A small minority of Haitians have actually been sent back to Haiti, and in an op-ed, this really, really bad cover guitarist and advocate for no borders, Robert O'Rourke, said this, quote, "Unfortunately, stung by the outcry and caught without a plan, the Biden administration used a cynical Trump-era policy known as Title 42 to immediately and without due process repatriate Haitians back to the country that they left a decade ago. We need to hold accountable those who would treat immigrants as less than human, whether they were separated from their families, blah, 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 under Biden," end quote. So the due process is you broke the law, and there is punishment for that. You're literally caught entering the country illegally. I don't think he understands the concept of due process, nor does he understand the concept of law breaking. Of course, I don't doubt it from a guy who decided to try to flee the scene of a drunk driving incident where he ran his pricey Volvo right into a truck and then tried to run away and lie about it later, but the Washington Post and police at the time called him out. He's right that the administration has no border plan, but he doesn't either, except to telegraph the fact that the Democrat Party is pretty much for no borders at all. So does the handling of our borders seem like we're building back better? Allowing a flood of people that will surely end. First up, we don't even know who they all are. I mean, remember that 9/11 began as an immigration issue where you had people overstaying their visas. You're counting on what? I think there are some people the people who are who enter in legally, these are the people who become part of the fabric of America. They create businesses. They build they build great families and communities. But I mean, that's how our country started. Our country didn't start by people who were sneaking in, and then that's not how it started. Building Back Better, that doesn't seem to be the way that Democrats and really the way that this administration, I really don't think they have any idea. They don't care. This is bad optics. They want a distraction. This is why Biden got 3 shots on television today. So, I don't know. You have Cubans who are turned away at the Florida border, but they're fleeing communism, and they tend to vote kind of conservative. In fact, I think it's like registered over 76% conservative when Cubans become American citizens. So, but we can't have those. Those people are turned away. In any case, is the fabric of American society building back better when you thrust millions of people into a country and you don't have any accountability and you also accommodate some people over other groups of people before the law? Or how about here in the middle of a pandemic when you have a bunch of people who are entering illegally and they're brought in unvaccinated? I mean, actually telling the press and law enforcement that they're unvaccinated. Or that, which I don't care if they're unvaccinated, but they're not wearing masks, they're not getting tested, which is the biggest thing to me. How about Border Patrol? I mean, what about that? Are we building these men and women back better? Or is the Biden administration selling them down the river in order to take the focus off of themselves? Watch this from Secretary Mayorkas on Friday.
We, our entire nation, saw horrifying images that do not reflect who we are, who we aspire to be, or the integrity and values of our truly heroic personnel in the Department of Homeland Security. The investigation into what occurred has not yet concluded. We know that those images painfully conjured up the worst elements of our nation's ongoing battle against systemic racism.
So you have, that's despicable. You have an open borders policy, which has caused a flood of individuals to overwhelm Border Patrol, and then you perpetuate lies about border agents whipping Haitians, which is untrue, and then you ban the use of horses, which Border Patrol need, particularly in this terrain, to do their jobs, and then you ban the horses and give those Border Patrol agents desk jobs while you say you're going to investigate them and say it all affirms America's systemic racism while ignoring that most Border Patrol agents are Hispanic. This is evil. I mean, the administration is going to blame anybody and everybody rather than take 1 ounce of responsibility. So thankfully, the governor of Texas says that he's going to hire these Border Patrol agents should they lose their jobs. And he confirmed this as well this afternoon on my radio program. But again, I asked, Build Back Better who? America? Doesn't seem that way. So who is being built back better? Since Democrats and media pretty much only ever really, I think, I just really kind of distract from the truth here. Every policy, every talking point, every action seems to undermine and deconstruct America and punish average Americans. We're giving preferential treatment to people who enter illegally. We dignify the Taliban as we accuse our own citizenry of being white supremacists. We have nothing negative to say about communist countries like China or Cuba who abuse human rights of their own citizenry. But we do take every opportunity to condemn America as systemically racist, even as millions, ironically, are attempting to flee to here. So far from building America up, the administration seems to be taking every last opportunity to break it down and also going after citizens' own livelihoods at the point of a needle, even as it takes in tens of thousands of people who aren't even tested when they come in and don't wear the face panties that you're telling everybody else to wear. If you spoke about your spouse the way the Democrats do America, I don't think you would have a marriage that would last for long. And it kind of feels that division that they're fueling. It sort of feels like things are unraveling. Not because it has to, but because it seems like the administration wants it to. And the administration does really the opposite of what it says, that it stands for at every turn. They're about unity, but they stoke division. They're for democracy, but they turn and ignore every rule of law. They want to build back better, but all they seem to do is make choices that are tearing the republic apart. So coming up, there's a lot of people who are anti-communist, and back during spring, there was someone who spoke out at one of the CRT school board meetings. Tang Williams is co-chair of the NH Asian American Coalition. She joins us next to discuss all of that. Stay with us. Black Rifle Coffee Company is a veteran-owned coffee company that serves premium coffee to people who love America. They developed their explosive roast profiles with the same mission focus that they learned while serving our great nation. And with every purchase you make, Black Rifle Coffee gives back. In 2020, they donated over 6 million cups of coffee to veteran, law enforcement, and first responder causes. Their high-quality coffee beans are imported all the way from Colombia and Brazil and then carefully roasted at their facilities in Tennessee and Utah. They even have a signature roast called Lava Panther that's directly sourced from a small farm in Guatemala. So although the temperatures are cooling off, make sure that you keep enjoying the great outdoors fueled by Black Rifle Coffee. And the best way to do that is the Black Rifle Coffee Club. And when you join, your chosen brews roasted, packaged, and shipped free to your door. You also get special discounts, gain access to exclusive products, and a lot more. Purchase at blackriflecoffe.com/Dana. Use code Dana at checkout for 20% off of your purchase and your first coffee club order. She immigrated from a communist country, China, 33 years ago, and is growing incredibly concerned by what she sees now happening here in America. This is crazy. Lily Tang Williams is a co-chair of the New Hampshire Asian American Coalition. She joins us now. Lily, welcome. It's good to see you. I know a lot of people got to hear you when you were speaking out about a lot of the critical race theory stuff. And really, I mean, what you said about the Cultural Revolution, Mao's Cultural Revolution, and some of the stuff that we've been seeing here, I think for the first time, people really began looking at it through that perspective and really seeing what all of this stuff actually meant after some of the remarks that you've had about CRT and other people have had about CRT. I mean, it's true. Talk a little bit about your perspective, like what you see happening here, whether it's education and, of course, you know, top-down federal mandates, to your experiences when you were growing up in China, and now you see, sadly, that the same stuff is happening in the U.S.
Right, and the immigrants like me who fled communist and socialist countries, some might be not speaking up yet because they have all kinds of worries and concerns about today's current cancel culture. That's why it's so sad about it. You are entitled to your free thoughts and free opinions and freedom of speech in a free country, but people have to worry about those things they care about. And I recognize this since last year. I have been warning people about this bigger and bigger authoritarian government and socialist risk, talking points and rhetorics for a while in this country. But the last year, I really just couldn't sleep because I saw the signs on the wall, and I saw all this division of the people, of the institutions, cancel culture, social justice movement, all just remind me what I went through in China by growing up under Mao's regime, went through 10 years cultural revolution.
Wow. Talking with Lily Tang Williams, and Lily, I mean, I think that's it's a powerful story because a lot of people who never had to endure that, it's one thing to live through it and see it firsthand, and it's another thing to read about it in history books and read different historical accounts, but I think that distance makes them not actually aware of the beginning stages of it when they see it, when it starts happening in their own country. I was reading something that you had wrote just about school children. And as you were saying, the social justice warriorism, and we see that so much with education today. And that's incredibly concerning because from what you had written, from the things that you've said before, that's exactly what they were doing to kids in China with Mao. That's exactly what they were doing. That's terrifying.
Well, they're doing to the children today more than China as the second largest economy. Now they wanted them to study, not Chairman Mao anymore, Chairman Xi's thoughts, little red app, and journalists have to be censored, state licensed, churches have to be state licensed. I found out the people in this country, they just really don't learn that much history and don't understand China. Of course, China is a big country, very complex historical, political, background and systems. So it is my job, because I lived there for 24 years. It is my job to learn about America, then see the similarities and educate people what could happen here, how fast you could lose your freedom, your property rights, your privacy, your parental rights. And just look at during the COVID shutdowns, the pandemic, how many people were told, you cannot do anything, you stay home, and your business closed, you cannot open, or you lose your license, and you must do this, you must do that. And our people complied due to fear, due to all the public goods and all that stuff that another side was talking about. I have seen things just getting worse and worse. And American people, lots of good people welcomed me when I first came to this country. they were demonized because of all this rhetoric and divide and conquer, social justice, critical race theory. And, if you were a white male today, lots of them, they cannot speak up. You were just being labeled racist. And it's so sad for me to say how Americans today are so divided and they cannot have a civil conversation with each other when it comes to movies, art, music, comedies. They all have to be self-censored. Look at what's happening to Bill Maher, right?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Talking with Lily Tang Williams. Lily, you made a point earlier that I think is incredibly important because there are people who immigrated to the country, became American citizens, know the dangers of communism firsthand, and a lot of them are afraid to speak up because, as you said, because of the cancel culture. And in my town, there was, a father from Vietnam, has a successful business, was initially worried about it, and then realized, oh my gosh, this is serious, and if we don't stop this now in its infancy, then it's going to get a lot worse, and then maybe we won't have the ability to speak out about this. Talk to us a little bit about that, because it's weird to see people on the left and people who think that this is completely fine always yell about appropriation with everything else, but that doesn't seem to bother them when it comes from these testimonies come from people who lived through communism, who experienced it. Suddenly, their real life lived experiences don't matter, which I find astounding. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that people got to understand, to learn history. I know our kids are not taught real history. I've been going to, kids to teach them. They really don't know. They think all those rhetoric sounds wonderful. Socialism, social justice sounds wonderful. But they don't understand when you totally rely on government and to provide your welfare state, to have higher taxes, then, you become very vulnerable. They can also take everything away. Socialism tried in all over the world. It always ended up to be people were equally poor and equally enslaved, and one political class, ruling class, they have all the power. So, so I think this critical race theory, that's why it scares me, is people just don't see the similarities. And last year, what happened? So-called use race, theory to justify looting, burning, and changing names, and defund the police, and the mafia-dominated state, violence-dominated state use race, skin color to divide people. In China, we use class to divide people. It's just very scary because it's the same tactics to divide people and then conquer and fundamentally transform America. This cultural revolution is happening. That's why immigrants like me who went through the first hand, we saw the writing on the wall. We feel very terrified and scared. That's why I'm getting immigrants who fled those countries. Be brave enough to come out, tell the truth, and trying to talk to our fellow citizens. Maybe they will listen to our first-hand experience and to wake up, to activate. Just voting is not enough, and some still don't even turn out to vote. And we're gonna lose this country if we keep going down this path. I'm very scared. We have no place to go. We're living American dream, come to this country with nothing. So what do? We need to be brave and speak up now.
Amen. And thank heavens that you're doing it. Thank heavens that people like you, Lily, are doing this. Before I let you go, I know you had said to my producer that we had met before in Colorado. When was that? Because I know you. I'm horrible with names, but faces I remember.
Well, you were busy and you had a book and you were our speaker at the leadership program, the Rockies. And it was
I remember this now, yes.
I was 2025, one of the graduates out of 60 students or something like that. And you were there, we had a picture taking. I was still learning about my new country's political system and how to, and get to know our own history and how to persuade people. I think we all should not demonize our fellow citizens, or doesn't matter which party. Let's have a conversation, because most people in the middle, they're our own Americans. So why not have a conversation? Why not reach out to each other? Sit down, talk. So I'm all for that. If Democrats want to invite me to talk to their organizations, I would love to. I think
they might be scared of you. I think they might be scared of you. I think the people that are in favor of that big statism, they're terrified of you because you're able to cut through it. And they know that you have the...
I had to eat the red meat to survive in China. So I said AOC, Bernie, and...
you had to eat rat meat to survive. I've heard stories like this. See, it's those stories like that you never, ever hear discussed on CNN or MSNBC, nothing like that.
And the thing is, people who don't know what true poverty is, what the true oppression is, what the true in slavery is about, then they want to talk about here in the media all the time. But for example, I would love to go to reach out to CNN, MSNBC, allow to have some time to talk to them about our own stories. And we are not oppressed in this country. We live in American dream. We love this country. America is a beautiful land of opportunity, and we come here with nothing, and we are living very comfortably as middle class. Why demonize this country? There are many immigrants still want to come.
And if everyone in America could fight as hard as you do, Lily, for it, this wouldn't even be a question. But you're doing the heavy lifting that some people who've been born here don't do. So thank you for that. Lily Tang Williams, it's a pleasure. It's good to see you again, Lily.
Thank you. You take care.
Of course. You too.
Bye-bye.
All right, folks, coming up, Democrats tried to slip some red flag provisions into the National Defense Authorization Act. We're going to talk about this. And the ACLU thinks apparently the Second Amendment is a threat to the First somehow. We'll talk with Mark Oliva with the National Shooting Sports Foundation next. How much equity do you have in your home? Cybercrime experts are alerting homeowners that the more equity they have, the greater the chance that criminals could target them. Home title theft is one of the fastest growing crimes, and Home Title Lock, America's leader in home title protection, is warning homeowners that they could potentially be victims and not know it. Cyber thieves can search hundreds of public databases for high equity homes, find their home's online title, forge the signature stating that you sold your home, and then take out loans with your equity. Insurance or common identity theft programs won't cover you. So protect your most valuable asset and register to see if you could potentially be a victim. Get a complete title history of your home, a $100 value, for free. Visit HometitleLock.com. So the Democrats slipped in a red flag provision into the NDAA bill, that's the military authorization bill, and we should all be paying attention. It's going to pass the House. Senate will, well, we'll see. The Senate has to pass its own version, and I think that they don't have as much leeway as the House does. There sadly were some Republicans that voted for this. Mark Oliva is the Director of Public Affairs for the National Shooting Sports Foundation, NSSF, and he joins me now to discuss this issue and others. Mark, it's good to see you. So I was looking back at some of the back and forth. So much of this is procedural. And I get that people get lost in the weeds on all of the procedural moves, but essentially it was sort of like a last minute poison pill that really has no bearing on this. And it has to deal with military protocol and whether or not, someone who is serving armed forces, if they could be red flagged. But it's weird because from everything that I was reading of this, this is a civil issue. But why? But it's being treated as a criminal issue, but it was a civil issue. And you already have so many things on the books that already address this. I mean, I've written about civil commitments for years now. I wanted to get your reaction to this, and then we'll get to the potential where it could go from the Senate.
Yeah, Dana, thanks again for having us. So it's great to talk to you again. It really is a nonsensical amendment that was slipped into the bill. It's the way it's written doesn't really seem to make sense. I served 25 years in the Marine Corps. I'm not unfamiliar with the Uniform Code of Military Justice and how it works. The idea of having the red flag with the National Shooting Sports Foundation isn't against red flags, but what we are concerned about is due process concerns, and those don't seem to be safeguarded in this. And especially when you're talking about people in the military, people in uniform, you're already giving up a lot of your personal rights for the privilege to be able to serve your nation. When I served, I had to give up parts of my freedom of speech. I had to give up parts of my freedom of movement. I had to make sure that my family was going to be safe when we were moving around all the time. I had to give up some of my gun rights when I was stationed in California. I couldn't buy the AR-15 that I wanted. I had to wait until I was moved out of California to do that. So when we see bills like this going through, it's exactly what you said. It's a poison pill, and probably the best thing about it is it does have to go through the Senate, and there's probably a very good likelihood that the Senate will strip it out.
Yeah, I can't see, especially when it's so close as it is now, and it feels like the Democrats are kind of fighting with each other. I can't see. Manchin might be able to go either way, but I don't see him doing that at this point. But I mean, not to get into the weeds with that, but the Senate's way more sensitive to this with the makeup of the Senate right now than the House is. But that's the thing. I mean, because my issue with red flag laws has been I've not seen one written so far that has touched an area where we have law that already covers it, while protecting our constitutional rights. And I know this was like this ex parte process, meaning it could all be done without you even being present. And maybe, I know some of these states have red flag laws where you're not even notified until someone comes knocks on your door. That's a super dangerous thing. But as you said, military code of conduct, why is something like this even needed? Because like you said, you had to give up a bunch of stuff when you served, and we appreciate your service. So this kind of stuff, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, this is kind of already covered.
It really is. And there are laws, even before red flag laws started to be introduced in the states, that there were mechanisms to be able to intercede. Some of the red flag laws lowered the threshold to do that. Really what this seems to be is a point of order and trying to make a point. And you see this with the parties that try to reach into the military and use the military as a pawn for their pet projects. And that's why the National Defense Authorization Act tends to get so many amendments. It's one of the bills that has to be passed by Congress every year. They have to push it through. And we saw that there were nearly 1,000 amendments that were made just in order, not just the ones that were submitted. There were hundreds that were kicked out that weren't considered part of the defense authorization bill, but this one was allowed to go through, and this part of it was. So we're very closely keeping an eye on it because, like you said, the due process rights are really where the rubber meets the road. Do you have the ability to see the evidence that's presented against you? Do you have the ability to refute that evidence? Are they allowing people to bring evidence in front of an authority without you being in there? That ex parte is very dangerous and very worrisome for us.
Yeah, very worrisome. And I don't want to get too much in the legislative aspect of it, but we always have we have great allies out there in the 2A community. You get some of those, and I love the people who have all that energy. I love them. I wouldn't trade them for the world. But some people are like, oh my gosh, this is a red flag bill, and you have all these people that voted for this red flag bill. And I want to say, well, hold on, no, wait a second. This was something shady that was done by the other side, and it's not a red flag bill. I'm saying this, and I'm pretty much straight no chaser on the Constitution. Like, I want my Black Hawk. I mean, especially if you're going to call me Texas Taliban, I want my Black Hawk. But I look at this, and I'm like, it wasn't a red flag bill. This actually was NDAA, and they slipped this in. And I think a lot of Republicans, some of those, like Matt Gaetz was saying, look, this is not going to go. It's not going to make it through the Senate. This isn't an issue. We needed to advance it. So for the people out there, this was really ultimately a vote to advance the bill at large, knowing that you have to reconcile this stuff that's going to get stripped out. I mean, it's a procedural fight.
It really is, Dan, and that's the sausage-making process. It's frustrating for everybody who watches it, and especially those who aren't in the fight every day. It can be very confusing, and it is one of those things that gets thrown in there, but it's one of those things where you have to really trust the allies, and you have to be reminding the allies in your Senate that you need them to be standing up and make sure that this portion of it is stripped out. But it really is. This is a defense bill. I don't think it's fair to say down the ranks of every Republican who voted for this National Defense Authorization Act that they voted for a red flag bill. They were voting for the advancement of the National Defense Authorization Act, knowing that there's going to be changes for when it hits the Senate.
Talking with Mark Oliva with NSSF, the thing I've always been worried about most is the way that some of our lawmakers on the other side of the aisle from us where it concerns 2A activities, how these folks they want to go after manufacturers, and they want to try to modify marketing and advertising rules and really kind of twist that all around so that you can just open a Pandora's box and start going after manufacturers who that to me, that's a variable, whether it's a firearm, whether it's a Tide Pod. Didn't we just have a whole story 2 years ago about people eating Tide Pods? Is Tide going to be held responsible? I'm not trying to diminish the severity of anything, but you see where I'm going with this? Like that, the whole fight to go after firearms manufacturers, this is kind of, it's kind of similar. It's just one of those things. I've been more worried about that. Really quickly, where are we on that front? I know there's been a lot of litigation.
Yeah, we continue to uphold the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act. And what that law basically says is that you can't come back and sue the firearm industry for selling a legal product, a lawful product, to a law-abiding citizen who's passed the background checks. You can't hold the firearm manufacturer or the retailer responsible for the criminal actions of a non-associated third party. Now, what we've seen up in New York State, we've obviously seen that Governor Cuomo, before he was booted out of office, he signed into law a bill that would basically go around the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act. Well, that's going to be a day that's going to wait for itself in court, because the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act is still there. So now you're going to have state law that's in conflict with federal law. And we watched that Joe Biden stood there in the Rose Garden ceremony the day he introduced David Chipman as his nominee to be the ATF director. Mm-hmm. He stood there and he prayed to God that if he could have a prayerful wishing well, I guess, that he would get this one wish, this one prayer, that he would repeal the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act. And it's interesting that he wanted to come after the industry, but he never talks about going after the criminals who are actually committing these crimes. And that's where we always point back to is hold those who are responsible for committing the crimes, hold them responsible for their actions, put them in jail, and start enacting the laws that you have on the books.
Yeah. Last question for you, Mark. I was looking at this press release from the ACLU, and I wanted to get your quick thoughts on this. Another 2A issue. They were saying that restrictions on guns in public spaces are appropriate to make public spaces safe for democratic participation, including 1A. And of course, this is that New York Rifle and Pistol Association case. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. And just a quick thought from you on that.
Yeah, the ACLU has never been a friend to the Second Amendment. You can go on their website. They have an entire section that's dedicated to denigrating Second Amendment rights. And this is exactly what Justice Thomas talked about when he said that the courts are relegating the Second Amendment to a second-class right. You've seen Justice Thomas, Justice Gorsuch, Justice Kavanaugh. They've all signed on, Justice Alito, they've all signed on to opinions saying that they want more Second Amendment cases because they see that this is happening. Those who should be standing up for your rights are denigrating those down to a second-class right and trying to basically wash it away together. The difficult part about this that the ACLU won't agree to on this is that if you can take away the Second Amendment right and you can rub that out, then you can take away your First Amendment right. None of your rights are sacred then. And these are rights that are given to us by God, not by our government. We own these. These are inherent to us. The government can't take them away.
There you are. That's well spoken, as always. That's why, Mark Oliva, that's why you're with that NSSF, and you do such great work with that organization. So good to see you. Thanks so much for joining me on this.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, folks, earlier today on my radio program, I spoke with Texas Governor Greg Abbott, and he broke an exclusive on the show about antibody treatment restrictions and how he's going to get around that for the Republic of Texas. We'll have that for you next. Keep it here. Thanks to Biden's economic policies, job numbers have been abysmal. Inflation is now, we're at the brink of it. And instead of following the former president's pro-business agenda that had our economy booming, Biden wants to tax corporations on the onset of inflation. Pass $1 trillion bills that we can't pay for. It actually does not cost $0. It costs lots of dollars. It's time for you to be proactive and take steps to protect your wealth and your retirement by investing in gold and precious metals. And Legacy Precious Metals can help you. Washington keeps printing money to pay for ridiculous bills, but all that does is devalue your dollar. Now, gold offers you a hedge against inflation. And as the dollar gets weaker, gold gets stronger. So my friends at Legacy Precious Metals are the gold standard when it comes to investing in precious metals. And they have a team of experts who can counsel you on the best options for you and your family. Don't leave your retirement and savings to chance. Call Legacy Precious Metals at 866-580-2088 or visit them online. Download their free investor's guide. It's full of all kinds of useful info, and you can find it at legacypminvestments.com. So after Biden cut Texas and other red states are actually seriously restricted their supplies of antibody treatments, those monoclonal antibody treatments, Texas is now bypassing the administration and, along with Florida, taking matters into their own hands. Texas Governor Greg Abbott broke the news earlier today in an exclusive on my radio program. And here's a portion of our interview where he breaks it all down. Take a listen.
President Biden is restricting some states' ability to get that treatment. It's also known as the Regeneron treatment. Remember this, the week before he restricted our ability to get allocations, he said he was increasing by 50% the amount of Regeneron antibody therapeutic treatment that people can access. And then the week after that, he cuts the access for states like Texas and Florida. This is a very proven, very effective treatment that is helping people in Texas choose the right pathway for them. So here's the deal. Biden cut us off, and I'm telling you first, and that is that Texas has obtained its own separate allocation of these monoclonal antibody therapeutic treatments, working around the limitation that President Biden put on us, so that we will be able to ensure that anybody in the state of Texas that wants access to these special treatments, that they will be able to get it. In order to get these monoclonal antibody therapeutic treatments, you do need to test positive for COVID. But if you do, this is a way of getting a treatment in a way that you will not, most likely, not be hospitalized or have to go to a hospital or anything like that. It does a great job of keeping out of hospitals people who do test positive for COVID-19.
That is, and that's huge, and that's great news. In fact, that's very good to hear that, talking with Texas Governor Greg Abbott, because we had heard from the administration that, they're going to be restricting this, and a lot of people were wondering, well, how are they going to be able to get that if they want it, and doctors citing it, et cetera. And I know that the administration was using the Defense Authorization Act to say that it specifically only allows them to procure this. But just for everybody who might just be tuning in, Texas Governor Greg Abbott says Texas is bypassing the Biden administration to get that monoclonal antibody treatment without having to depend upon the good graces of the administration. How does that process work for Texas? How do you I'm assuming you just get it. Do you get it from the manufacturer? How does this work?
There is a medical provider, AmerisourceBergen is the provider, and we go directly to them and purchase directly from them. And we have more than 350 locations across the state of Texas where people can get these monoclonal antibody therapeutic treatments, and they're so effective at keeping people out of hospitals. And so we urge people, if you do test positive, to consider getting this treatment. Talk to your doctor. You need a prescription. But we are ensuring that anybody who tests positive will have access to this treatment. Dana, let's go back in time so your audience will remember. Remember that President Trump tested positive for COVID. Mm-hmm. One of the first things he did, he got this monoclonal antibody therapeutic treatment from Regeneron, and he said it made him feel better than he'd ever felt. And so we urge people to consider this as one of their options if they do test positive for COVID.
And that's and I'm glad you're doing that, Governor. I'm glad to hear it, because it seems like people, if we're following science, then people should be able to have access to everything, right? The full suite of therapeutics, et cetera. And obviously that's something with which you agree. So why the, I guess, criticism from the administration and other parts of from the left or against this kind of pursuit and against using these sort of therapeutics? I mean, nobody's out there claiming that things like ivermectin or monoclonal antibody treatments are curing the virus, but it's a great way to deal with the severity of symptoms, correct?
I'll be candid with you, Dana, and that is, if you look at what President Biden has said and then his actions, he has been highly critical of Texas and Florida, and it seems like it's an act of hostility by the Biden administration against Texas and Florida by limiting our allocation from the federal government, even though the federal government has more supplies now than ever before. And so Biden can do whatever he wants to do. We're going to find a way to make sure that the people of the state of Texas will have access to all the treatments they need to make sure they will be able to recover from COVID if they choose to get these monoclonal antibody therapeutic treatments.
When do you think that restriction, when does that all kick into effect? Is that something that's going to be immediate, where that restriction, because of your move to procure that directly from the provider, is that going to stop and end any concern about the restriction ASAP, or is there a date on when that actually kicks in?
I'm sorry, Dana, which restriction?
The restriction from the administration on the monoclonal antibody treatment. The last question I have for you, because I know you're procuring that from the provider. Is that a deal that is just is pretty much, it's a done deal now, and so people in Texas don't need to worry about those restrictions any longer on that Regeneron?
Yes.
Okay.
Texans do not need to worry at all about any limitation on the monoclonal antibody therapeutic drug, because we have purchase orders already in place.
Fantastic.
Where we are getting these drugs from the provider AmerisourceBergen, and we can get as much as we need.
You can watch the full interview over on YouTube or on Facebook at Official Dana Lash on Facebook. That does it for us tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Good night, and don't bend the knee.